butternut squash and sage soup with a ham and cheddar grilled cheese. So I'm gonna first start out by adding a little bit of oil to my Dutch oven, just enough to kind of cover the pot so it doesn't stick. And then I'm gonna start by chopping up one yellow onion. Get that off. And I'm gonna remove the outer skin of it. I'm just gonna peel off that whole outer layer so it's just easier to chop. You only lose a little bit of your onion, but it saves you time. And then I'm just gonna do a simple, kind of a small dice with my onions because I'm going in the soup and I want them to kind of caramelize up, but in the end, I'm gonna end up pureeing my soup, so the smaller the chunk, the easier it'll be to puree. I'm gonna dice this one up. And I'm using a yellow onion. You could use a sweet onion or a Valdalia onion. Those are all great options for stews and soups. So I'm gonna turn on my heat to about an 8. I'm gonna add in my onions. So this is just one whole onion diced up. And then I'm also going to add in a spoonful of minced garlic. That's probably about a teaspoon. And before I get to chopping up my butternut, I'm going to chop up some fresh sage. I really feel like sage complements the butternut squash and the sweetness of the squash really well. I'm not a big fan of sweet butternut squash soups. Like Panera's, I think, is very sweet. I prefer the more savory ones. So this sage will pair really nicely with it, as well as the garlic and the onions. So I'm gonna just first peel off all of the leaves, because the stalk, if you were making a broth, you could put the stalk in there to seep some more flavor out. But since I'm gonna use it in the soup as a puree, I just want the softer leaves. And if you've never seen fresh sage before, it's a really soft and fuzzy leaf, kind of like lamb's ear. I don't know if you grew up, when you were a kid, if you ever went out and you picked those really fuzzy big leaves out of the ground. It's really soft like that, and it has a nice fragrant aroma to it. But I find that it pairs really well with squash and with sausage too. One of my favorite things is butternut squash ravioli with a brown buttered sage sauce and some sausage in that. It's delicious. So now that I have all the leaves here, I'm going to just really mince this up really nice and fine. So I'm just pushing the top end of my knife into my cutting board, and then I'm kind of lifting up with the other hand, and this is gonna allow me to have some good force behind it and chop up the herbs real nice and fine. And then what I do is I just switch directions and chop the other way. It's much easier to chop up your herbs this way than it is to try to go like this. It's really hard to get a good force down on it. And by having your hand on here, you're also safe from cutting yourself. So I'm just gonna really mince it up real nice. That way it will really let out the flavors when I saute it in here. I'm gonna get my spoon here, and now that the oil is starting to bubble, I'm gonna give this a good stir. Break up some of that garlic that was clumping together. And I'm also gonna try to break up any chunks of onions that are kind of still stuck together. That way I can get a good caramelization on all of them. There we go, nice. And I'm also gonna throw in my fresh minced up sage right now. That way the heat can really bring out its aromatic flavors. And then I'm gonna give it, of course, a good little stir. Just like this. Perfect. Just turn it down to about a 6, and now I'm going to chop up this big boy This is a pretty large butternut squash. You could also use the pre-chopped ones that you can get in the grocery store, you know, where they sell the broccoli and other ready vegetables. So I've cut off the ends of both of mine, and I'm now going to cut off the bulbous part right here because this one's a little bit harder to cut. And I'm just going to lay it like this. You see I have a nice flat surface. This makes holding it easier. And I'm just going to peel my skin off like this. You can technically use a peeler on it, but it's so hard. So I find just going down and just cutting off this top layer makes for an easy, quick peel of the butternut squash. But the key is you want to make sure that you cut it off flat so that it's easy to cut. And I'm just kind of trying to cut as close to the skin as possible. So I've got this one all trimmed up real quick. And now it's a little slippery now. And then I'm going to do this one, which is going to be a little bit harder because it's more bulbous and not a straight flat down. I'm just kind of using my knife. I'm pushing down with a pretty good amount of force. And I'm just kind of following the curve of the squash. And just about done here. Let's off these last little bit because we'll want the skin off because that will be tough when we cook it up. So I'm going to get rid of these little scraps. I'm going to give my onions over here with the sage and the garlic a little stir. They're starting to get a little bit more yellow. I'll know they're ready when they have a nice golden brown. And now I'm going to dice up my squash. So first I'm going to cut this one in half because this is where the seeds are. There's not much seeds in this one, but I'm going to take a spoon and just kind of scrape out some of these seeds and that pulpy texture. And I'm scraping it into my trash can just for easy cleanup. But luckily butternut squash isn't quite as seedy as a pumpkin, so there's not much cleaning out that you have to do. And it comes out real easy with a spoon. There we go. And the big thing is you just don't want to get any of the seeds into your squash. And then I'm just going to lay it on the flat side down so that I can chop it up, and I'm going to slice it. And since I'm making a puree, I'm going to slice it a bit thinner than I would do if I were roasting them. So I'm just going to chop these up into a small dice like this. And get these ones that are a little bit harder out first, which are where the bulb is, or where the seeds grow. And slice this up. Again, you can always buy it pre-chopped up at the store. These just looked really good and were on sale, so I grabbed them. It's a bit cheaper if you actually pre-peel it yourself than to get the pre-cut and pre-washed stuff. So for me, since we typically feed a small army here, whatever is the most cost-effective is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to give this a quick stir over here. Get a nice, some of the edges are starting to turn brown and to caramelize. And then I'm going to dice up these. I'm going to just pull these two little seeds out because I don't want those in my soup. And just a quick little chop up. Doesn't have to be perfect. Mainly you just want them consistent in size so that they'll saute up nicely together. Perfect. And I'll do a quick on here. And again, if you're joining us, we're making a butternut squash and sage soup with a ham and cheddar grilled cheese. I like my butternut squash soup to be more savory instead of sweet. I know some people like it sweet. I prefer the savory. I'm going to just cut this down lengthwise. And that will just make this a little bit easier for me to manipulate. It's not a super tough squash to cut through. I find sweet potatoes are actually much harder to chop through than butternut squash. And it gets real tender. So you can see our onions over here. They're caramelizing up nice. I put 1 sweet onion in here with some oil, about a teaspoon of minced garlic, and then I had just a small herb container of fresh sage that I minced up, and I added in there. And I'm just gonna kind of caramelize those to help bring out the sage flavor and bring out the a little bit of the sweetness of the onions while I chop these guys up. And this will yield about, if you're gonna eat it for like a full soup portion, about 4 good sized bowls, or if you're having it with like a side, you could probably do about 6 servings of it. So it adds a nice, I like to dip my grilled cheeses when I make them, so it adds a nice little flavor with my ham and cheddar when I dip it in. But you could also just eat it as a standalone. You could also saute up bacon and crumble it on the soup as well. Look, a little bit of the rind is still there, so I'm just gonna peel that off because that won't be good in the soup. And then I'm just gonna chop these up. Again, you see how I'm pushing on the top with my hand? It provides more force and it's much easier. If I try to do it like this, I have to use a lot more force with this hand. But if I use and I can help, it's much easier to chop through. And now, we're just about minced up of the butternut squash. I find for making butternut squash or any type of squash soup, this is pretty much the best squash to use, butternut. Acorn is a little bit more gritty. Pumpkin works, but it also has a more mealy and it's not as a smooth texture as in blend. Hubbard squash works well as too, but it's not as easy to find. Butternut squash is probably going to be in everyone's grocery store. There we go. I find acorn squash is much better for roasting in the oven. It has nice things than it is for making a stew or soup out of. There we go. Now I'm to my last one. And now that I have these all kind of minced up and about the same size, I'm going to add them to my pot, but I'm going to give a quick stir, just like this. And I'm going to add just a bit more oil because I want to get a nice little browning on the squash as well. So let me pick up my thing. Put all of this in here. There we go. Got all my cubed butternut squash in here. Now I'm just going to give it a good stir to kind of coat with the oil that I just poured in, as well as move those onions around so they don't burn at the bottom. I really love using a Dutch oven for cooking stews and soups because it holds in the heat, it retains it, and it kind of cooks it evenly. So even if you were to turn off the heat, it would still cook it for a little bit longer, which is perfect for soups. Okay, now you can see I've got the nice, and I have it mixing up just the way I want it. Now I'm going to use a little bit of garlic salt, and I'm just going to sprinkle this a little over the top of my squash. There was probably about 1.5 teaspoons. This is not going to be the only salt that I use. I'm going to have some salt in the broth that I use, the bouillon. So this is just a little bit. And then I'm going to add a couple pinches of pepper. And this is just a regular ground black pepper. I'm going to give this a nice stir. And you can see some of them are starting to brown already on the bottom. Butternut squash cooks up fairly quickly, which makes it a great like mealtime soup that you can kind of prep and have done in like 30 minutes, which is what I love. Okay, got that stirring up. I'm going to turn on my water here. I'm going to let it run because I'm going to want to use hot water just so my soup cooks faster. While that's running and heating up, I've got my measuring cup, and I'm going to do 4 cups to start with, but I'm going to see how it covers my squash and if I need to add a little bit more. And what we're gonna do, you could use straight up chicken broth, but I like to use water mixed with bouillon because I can add a bit more bouillon to give it a little more flavor and richness to the broth versus if you were to use straight up chicken broth. It's I find straight up chicken broth is a bit watery. I'm gonna go check to see if my sink is hot. Our house is on a slab. So in the winter, it takes a minute for the water to warm up because it's got to travel from our water heater on the other side through the concrete slab here. Okay, now I've got some warm water. I'm going to fill it up. I'm going to use 4 cups of water. And I might add a little bit more. I'm just going to see how it covers the squash because since I cut up a big fresh squash, I'm kind of guesstimating versus if I were to use pre-measured squash. Okay, I'm gonna give it a quick stir before I pour it in. You can hear it sizzling nicely. I'm gonna turn it up a little higher because I'm gonna pour in my 4 cups of water. I want to make sure that all of the squash is covered. So I think I'm going to just put maybe a cup more, so maybe 5 cups. Just because I had a pretty big butternut squash there. So I'm going to put my 5 cups in here. Good. And I'm going to give it a nice stir. And now I'm going to add, where did my spoon go? It's hiding, I guess. Oh, right here. I'm going to add a big heaping spoon of Better Than bouillon, or this is what I use. You can use whatever bouillon you want, or you could use straight up chicken broth. I like it because it's gonna add the saltiness to my thing without having to add more table salt. So that's a big one. That's probably 2 tablespoons if you were to measure it out exactly. When I cook, I kind of eye it, but I always give you guys an approximation about how much it is. And I'm gonna just stir this up in there so that it can dissolve and it will help marinate the butternut squash. A nice little, and then in a few minutes I'll taste the broth to make sure it's got all the seasoning and spice that I want to it before I'm ready to blend it. So I'm going to turn this guy up to high, and now we're going to start prepping our grilled cheese. So let me clear off my little area so I have some room to show you. I'm going to be using my skillet to cook it in. You could use any nonstick surface. I really love this skillet. It's a hex-clad, and what's really nice about hex-clad is that it's scratch resistant. So I've gone through a lot of other nonstick surfaces and I've scratched them up, and the bad side about the nonstick things is if you scratch Teflon, it can be poisonous and it can leak toxins in. So far I've had this for a little over a year. And I really love it. It's a little bit more expensive on the side, but I did find that TikTok has it on sale. So in my store, it's about cheaper than what you can get it on the actual hex-clad. So if you wanted to purchase it, you could there. But this is just great. Also, you could use any non-stick one, or a skillet, or a cast iron. But you're gonna wanna use something that will crisp up nicely and not stick to it, especially with cheese, because it might run out the sides. So I'm gonna just make 2 big sandwiches today. I'm using sourdough bread. So you could buy it from the things. I got this out of the bakery section at our thing. I normally make my own sourdough, but while we were on vacation, my sourdough starter molded because I forgot to put it in the fridge, which means I had to throw it out. And it takes a week to make it new, so I'm on, I think, day 6 of making it, so soon I'll have my own bread coming up. But right now, store-bought it is. So I'm gonna start with some butter, and I'm going to just spread butter on one side of each of my slices of bread. And you wanna use softened butter. I leave a stick out on the counter so that I always have soft butter. And this is a fun little thing, is like a butter stick. For spreading, like a butter knife, but it's really like a paddle or a stick, but it's so much better than using a typical like metal butter knife. My friend got it for me when she was in Sweden, and I'm Swedish, so it has a little Swedish flag on it and everything, but this, even my kids says, they're always like, where did the butter paddle go? So it's if you use a lot of butter or make a lot of grilled cheeses, this is what you need. You need one of these. Okay, and I'm gonna spread this so now I've got butter on just one side of each of my pieces of bread, so you can see you don't need it on the inside, you just need it on the outside so that it will crisp up nicely. Okay, clean over. Now I'm gonna use cheddar, and I have some Black Forest ham. I actually ended up getting both of these from Costco, but you could use any one you like. This is just a sharp cheddar. I'm a fan of the sharper the cheddar, the better it tastes, I believe. So I'm gonna get out some cheddar and some ham. So it'll be like a ham and cheddar melt. Ah, my hands are buttery. There. If I could open it. There, almost got it. They make these hard. There we go. So I have my ham ready. Before I make this, it looks like my soup is bubbling up, so I want to give it a good stir. You can see it's got a nice little bubble all around. There we go. Perfect. And I'm gonna check that off. Back to our ham and cheddars. So I'm gonna just open them up, put the butter down, and I'm gonna start by layering. I'm gonna have probably 1.5 on the bottom. My trick for making grilled cheeses is I like, if I'm gonna put meat or something in the middle, I put cheese on that, then I put the meat, and then I put cheese on top. That way you got a good melt all the way through. And then I'm gonna put, I would say 2, maybe we'll do 3 slices of ham on there. And then, oh, we got a big bubble over here. And then I'm gonna put that other 1.5 on there. I'm gonna turn this guy down just a little bit. And give it a nice stir, which is what we want. This is bubbling real nice. That's one thing that's nice about the Dutch oven. Once the pot is hot, it keeps the heat well. So now I have it cooking on about a 4, and in just a minute or two, it will slow down the bubbling. And now let's work on sandwich number 2. So I'm gonna lay a slice and a half on the bottom. If you have smaller slices of bread, you can use less cheese, or if you're bigger, there. But you just want to make sure that your whole inside is covered. And then I'm going to take 3 slices of ham. You could use any ham that you like. This is a Black Forest, but honey ham. If you had leftovers, like if you had ham at Christmas and you had leftover Christmas ham, you could use these on the sandwich as well. So I got my 3 slices there. And then I'm going to add my 1.5. We'll put a little more on this one. He's kind of sliding off. There. Extra cheese never hurt anybody. And then, voila. I've got the base for our grilled cheeses cooking. So I'm gonna go turn on my skillet over here. And the great thing is, because I already buttered it, we don't need to butter the raw one again. We don't need to butter the pan. That's why I find it, so then you don't have to worry about like butter burning on the sides if it wasn't touching the thing. It will just cook nicely and crisp up on there. So I'm gonna put my 2 on here. I'm gonna have it cooking at about an 8. Once it gets real hot, I'm gonna turn it down so it doesn't burn. Let's come over here and check out the butternut squash. See how it's progressing. See if it's gotten tender yet. And it's getting there. It needs probably about a few more minutes. So while that's waits, I'm gonna cut up some fruit to have with it. I buy a lot of our fruit already whole at Costco or the grocery store because it's just much cheaper. And so I'm gonna cut that up for you. You saw me cut up a butternut squash. And now, you might be daunting. Some people are like, oh, I can't cut up a fresh pineapple. They're crazy. There's actually an easy trick to cutting up your pineapple. So you can take off your top. And you're gonna take off the bottom. And you want a nice, flat working surface just like this. And then I'm gonna cut it in half. I'm gonna start with half at a time. So I'll cut this. And then you're just gonna remove the core like that. And then I cut it one more time. And then I just slowly cut down like that. So you get all the rind off and you're left with a nice, delicious spear, which I'll chop up in just a second. But it really isn't as hard as you think. And I will say, don't get one of those pineapple peeler core thing gimmicks. They never work. This is just simple, easy. It gets the core out. So right here, you can kind of see in the circle of the pineapple, that's the core, that's the hard chewy part. You don't want that. So I just cut this out. If you have a little baby at home, like a toddler, my 1-year-old loves to chew on these pineapple sticks, especially when he's teething. So they have a lot of great flavor in them. So he loves to chew on those. I'll give them to him with at lunch or dinner. And I've got that off. But this pineapple, I think, cost me $2.99 at Costco. And if I were to buy it pre-cut up at the store at Publix, I know it's like 12 bucks. So it definitely takes more, takes the time, but it's really not hard and it will save you a lot of money in the long run. So now I'm just gonna peel this one off. Let me give a quick little stir to my soup right here. Oh look, looks like this is starting to get soft, which is what we want, because we're gonna blend this up into a nice thing, so we need to make sure they're all soft. So we're getting there. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit more. I have a little, you can see, there's just a little bad part of my thing. So I'm just gonna cut that out. And peel the skin off of this. And tonight, we can have some pineapple at lunch, but we'll have pineapple at dinner as well. I always try to serve a fresh fruit at each of my kids' meals. Just so I know they're getting some good healthy stuff in there as well, because they're not as apt to pick a fresh fruit if they want a snack. So I always make sure they have it in their meals. Here, let me get a big bowl so I can put that in.
Big bowl.
A big bowl, teddy bears. You like pineapple? Yeah, you like some pineapple? Okay, I'm gonna chop it up, just like you would see it at the store. I also, when I'm chopping up my pineapple, I wanna make sure that it has a little bit of a golden color already on the outside, but hasn't turned brown and the leaves haven't turned brown. This will mean that your pineapple is ripe and sweet. If you cut it when it's still really green on the outside, then it will be more bitter and not as sweet and really tough. And if you wait for it to be brown or too golden, you're stealing some pineapple, pop them. And then it won't taste as, it'll be like really kind of a sweet, but in a like old banana sweet way. So I have another pineapple over here. That one I got it, but you can see it's really, really green. So it's, if I cut this up now, it's gonna be more bitter and hard, and nobody likes bad pineapple. So you're gonna want the nice golden color like this, so you just have to be patient and wait until it's golden on the outside. Okay, I'm gonna check on my grilled cheese over here. Let me pull out a spatula. Grilled cheese, are you excited to have some grilled cheese?
Yeah.
So let me look up and flip over and see how it looks. Oh, look at that. Perfect. I'm gonna flip it over. I might finish it off a little bit more on the other end, but I'm just gonna do a quick little flip now, just so I can get some heat. This side still needs some, you see. I wanna wait until it's completely golden on this side. So I'm gonna flip it, turn it down a little bit. Let me look at my squash. I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna see if I can smush it easily. If I can smush it easily, that means I can start blending it. And look, it smushes just the way I want it. So now it's ready for me to puree. So I'm just gonna turn down the heat just a little bit, but I'm gonna keep it going. I'm gonna get my blender out and a ladle. Oh, ladle. There. And then before I blend, I do want to try a little bit of taste of the broth, see if I need to add any more. It has perfect saltiness. The sage is bringing it out. If you're just joining us late, this was one large butternut squash cut up with one onion that I sauteed, fresh garlic, and fresh sage and oil, and I sauteed that up, and then we added some water and chicken bouillon, and now we're gonna blend it up into a nice puree. Coming to join us, buddy?
Yeah.
Good. He is my helper. We call him Chef Teddy. I'm hearing this sizzle over here nicely, so I'm thinking it's ready to flip. Perfect. So we're going there. This side, I think, I'm gonna just turn it a little bit because my top is cooking faster than my bottom. I'm gonna turn it down just a little because I want it to really cook and heat up. You gonna come help me over here, bud?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be working over here. Do you wanna move over here and help me?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me put the lid on. You could use a big blender, you could use a food processor. My old blender broke and I find food processors a pain in the butt to clean. So I'm just gonna use my big
You're getting
Ninja.
asked what brand are the pots and pans?
These are Hexclad. This is a Le Creuset and this is a Hexclad. This is, I love Hexclad for the non-stick. They're amazing. I got them about a year ago. They have yet to scratch and they are awesome. I actually have this pan in my TikTok shop and it's on sale there. It's cheaper than what you can get at the Hexclad store. So if you want to invest in a good one, the Hexclad is what I would recommend. They also sell like Cuisinart and other ones, but every one of those that I've bought has scratched, and once you scratch a non-stick pan, they can be toxic. Okay, buddy, are you ready to blend?
Yeah.
We're gonna start blending up our soup. You want me to bring it closer to you so you can help me?
It's here.
Yeah, it is. So I'm just blending it here. Perfect. You don't need much to blend it.
Like
then-
Carrie.
Yeah. And then what I do is I just blend it in batches and then I'm gonna pour it back into here. Just like that. And I'm gonna blend up our whole soup. Remember, that's hot, buddy, because the soup is hot. So just don't touch those blades. Perfect. Oh, thank you, Chef Teddy. Yeah, do you see the steam?
Yeah.
That's when we know it's hot. So I'm gonna pour it in here. Let me look at my grilled cheese real quick. Yeah, perfect. So I'm gonna flip these over one more time so that I can saute nicely. It's not smoke, it's steam. It's steam from the soup. And I'm gonna screw this on. And you wanna make sure your lid's on good, otherwise you'll have your soup come out the bottom. It doesn't take much. You can see how already it's thickening up in there nicely. Butternut squash soup is it thickens up nicely. And it's fairly healthy. So you can see how it's nice and thick in here, which is gonna give you that really creamy texture. So I'm gonna scoop out some more of this squash. Sometimes I like to leave a couple little chunks in there so that my soup has a little bit of texture, but you can also certainly blend it completely smooth. Yeah, completely smooth. I know. We're almost done. I probably have 2 more batches that I need to blend. Again, if you had a smaller squash, you'd probably make a little bit less, but this is gonna be a good amount for 6 adults, or if you were gonna do it as a full soup. Let me check these. A little bit more right here. I'm gonna twist it around. Yes. There we go, and I'm gonna blend. You ready to help me, buddy? Good job. You're so strong. It did. We go. Let's see. There we go.
Hard.
I know. Sometimes the heat creates a good seal on it, and it's hard to open. There we go. Also, when you're using a blender, make sure you don't fill it above the max fill line. Otherwise, the blender will push it out, and nobody wants to clean up that type of mess. So now I'm gonna use a slotted spoon to help me get out the rest of my chunks on the bottom. And this will allow the broth to fall through. The broth, yeah. And that way I can get all of my good chunks in here and blend them up. Just like this. And I have my grilled cheese. It's cooking on low just to make sure that the ham gets heated up all the way and the cheese melted. When you have a thicker grilled cheese like this, you're gonna want to cook it on lower for a little bit longer. which these are, you can see they're melting nicely. You can see that cheese is almost there. So we'll flip them in a little bit once I get this last bit in. I know, and then we'll be about ready. I think we almost got all the chunks out of here, bud. But this is, it's a really nice savory soup. It's different than like Panera's butternut squash. They use like apples and carrots and I think some brown sugar or something in it. I prefer a more savory soup than a sweet one, just because I like my food. I'm a savory girl. I like salty foods.
Me too.
Yeah, you too? Are you like mama? Don't have much of a sweet tooth? Okay, so I'm just get the last little bit. And then I'm just gonna put just a little bit of broth in here too, so it'll blend up nicely. I'm gonna put my lid on it. Get it there. And you could also use a food processor or a full-size blender. I just find that this works well for me. And then we're gonna blend. Also, if you have a young baby, this was one of the soups that I made for my little ones when they were just learning to eat, because it's a nice savory puree. And butternut squash has lots of great nutrients in it. Okay, we'll pour this in here. And now I'm done with my slotted spoon. But I'm gonna make sure I get all of this creamy deliciousness out of here. Just like that, perfect. Delicious. And then we're gonna give this a good stir. And let me check my grilled cheese. Gonna do it one last flip. Oh, perfect. This is what I want. Nice, and now we're about ready to eat. So I'm gonna turn off the heat on my grilled cheese. I'm gonna get a plate, a bowl, and a spoon. You can't eat your soup without a spoon. And we're gonna start. I'm gonna turn the heat off here. And we're gonna put it in here just like this. You could also add, if you wanted it creamier, you could add cream to it, but I like it just like this. It's really healthy too. So I've got my butternut squash soup with fresh sage and a nice ham and cheddar grilled cheese. I'm gonna cut this in half. See if I can get it all the way through for you guys. Perfect. You can see the melted cheese in there. Nice and gooey, just the way. Here's a good squeeze, you know it's right. And then I like to dip it in my soup. Perfect. Would you like to taste? It's a little bit hot. Oh, it's still hot? Try right here. But like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me today. We do lives every day.